Hi, my name is H.C. Kirkland III. I'm here to read my book titled Drop for the Dothan Houston County Library System. Drop is a dark fiction rooted in horror that it tells the story of an evil that lies deep inside of everyone's subconscious, and the idea being that it could be tapped into whether by accident or on purpose. And in this story, it is tapped into by accident uh, by a group of friends that are experimenting with LSD. That the drug is the catalyst for what happens. This once it is tapped into, it can completely take over everything, and these circumstances that lead to it is like a domino effect, if that makes sense. Every These friends, they suffer greatly by the end of this story. I chose to read chapter 13, not really for any particular reason, just because for me, I remember writing it, it just seemed kind of fun to write, because this is when everything starts to fall into chaos for these friends. This is the turning point, pretty much. They The narrator he senses everything falling apart, and it's mainly because his best friend has turned up missing. So once that happens, it kind of freaks everybody out because they are tripping. Just and they can't really understand what's going on. They don't know where he's at. They don't know if he's messing with them or if he's actually lost. But their paranoia starts to creep in with all these friends. So it's chapter 13, and it's titled "Return of the Beast: Waves of Badness." My reflection of the past was interrupted by Hess. He came over to the fire and threw more wood into it. He ran his hand across his head, through his short hair, rather slowly, and began to look around curiously. He turned to me and asked, dubiously, "Where the hell is Jacob?" Dang, I thought. This was it. The end. Sanity would surely fall now. Everyone looked around suspiciously, stabbing at one another with uncertain glances. The fire was raging now that Hess had fed it. More wood to devour, and every face was awash with its brilliant glare. Just as I had feared it would happen, every face seemed to be stricken with panic. Lena and Helen stood to their feet and monitored the darkness. They mulled the possibilities as they tried deciphering what was happening. Perhaps they were even thinking, as I was, and feared the darkness had gobbled them up like a speck of light near a black hole. There was no way of knowing what that nasty demon was sweetly coaxing into their minds. They may have even suspected that sleeping giants within these trees had ripped them apart. "Where did he go?" Lena asked disquietly. Her eyes floated to Hess, who was glowering intently at the darkness beyond us. "Stop playing around, Jacob," he yelled incriminatingly. His abrasive tone boggled my nerves, and parts of my flimsy mind flinched. While concern and worry flooded everyone else, anger and suspicion seemed to have overtaken him. "Did he even leave the graveyard?" Helen asked, to no one in particular, still watching the shadows for movement. "I don't remember even seeing him since we got back." "I don't know," I said. "He could have. I don't remember." In one incredibly dirty gangbang panic, paranoia, fear, and confusion impregnated the atmosphere just as I had foreseen. Helen and Lena were at odds in agreement. Helen swore that he had been present on the path with us, while Lena and I adamantly, excuse me, while Lena was adamant that we had abandoned him at the graveside. Both were very influential, but I could neither make up my mind or convince myself even to try. I was swirling in the fog the predicament had induced. I could ascertain, though, fear brooding. Hess was completely sold on the possibility that he was screwing with us. He went so far as to driving his car around the pond and the entire clearing, shining his lights everywhere to expose him hiding. He was nowhere to be seen. We called out to him. The girls were screaming his name for literally 10 minutes, stopping in only short intervals to listen for a response. Nothing. What had happened? It was all too confusing. I was in no shape to handle anything, let alone a disappearance. Hess was standing with his back to us and the fire, facing the pond again. I'm not sure if he was speaking to himself or to us, but softly and yet sternly he said, "There's no way he doesn't hear us. He's messing with us." He then turned and faced us, with dull, crazy eyes that glare in the fire like shards of gold. "He's out there messing with us." He was pointing to a generalized area that was understood to be anywhere in the vast forest. I didn't believe him, nor did I think he ever left the graveyard myself. My thoughts traversed many possibilities, but the one most plausible to me was that he was staring into and hearing the darkness he had allowed something in. Not him himself, though, but the demon which had materialized through his shadow conscious and then invited something from those masqueraded depths beyond the graves. It had selfishly welcomed the dark, and his body was merely an expendable vessel, and his mind was the sacred victim. I knew this, but didn't understand how I knew, just as I knew from the beginning that this acid was cursed, just as I somehow knew that the portal of the shadow within us all opened both ways, and that if we could pass through, then so could some unknown being lying listlessly impatient beyond the other side, and only God knew what that bastard was capable of. I kept my thoughts locked away tight, for I didn't want to sound crazy. Things were crazy enough as they were. Besides, I didn't want to upset the demon stirring within the others. As I pondered, I felt as though it was I losing my mind. It seemed impossible to stay calm with paranoia freezing the air around us. Helen grabbed at her lower lip and took a sharp breath into her lungs, saying, "What if he's out there?" Lena was shaking her head with her eyes fixed upon the pond. "Oh my God, I don't even want to think about that. That would be horrible." "It is horrible." Hess was stalking around the campsite. His anger seemed to throb and fester from within him by the minute. I understood him, though. This is what I feared most. His rage. Maybe I was just losing it. After all, I had thought so on more than one occasion thus far tonight. "He's not lost," Hess snapped. "Stop trying to freak everybody out." Helen raised her eyes at him. It had appeared that he had spoken harshly, but perhaps, like myself, she thought that she was misconstruing. She thought that she was misconstruing actuality because she sheepishly apologized to him. He continued, "He can't be lost. Even if he did somehow get separated from us, he would be able to see this fire, or hear us, for Christ's sake." His tone was defensive and mean. I still wasn't at all sure why. As belligerent as he sounded, he did have a point. Besides, stomping around in the woods at night with a head soaked with acid may have been fun at any other time, but not this night. Even I could see that. "You're right," I said. "There's no way we'll ever find him, even if he isn't lost. Besides, I'm too ripped to be lost out there by myself." I could see the apprehension melting from their troubled stares to their stone faces. They didn't want to go into the woods any more than Hess and I did, but they didn't want to sit idly by, leaving him out there alone either. After some discussion, we all, except for Hess, agreed that if he weren't back after an hour, we would look for him. I had tentatively agreed to hope that it would never come to that, and he would just come strolling out of the forest laughing, calling us all dumb for worrying. The atmosphere was heavy with fear, and I could feel it dripping like cold rain on us. We all knew that something terrible had happened or was going to happen. Even Hess knew this, I think. The ominous foreshadowing permeated the setting we occupied with destined travesty. Hess lurked around the outer reaches of the light from the fire, studying the darkness for signs of Jacob. The girls were quiet, possibly thinking of Jacob and the horrors he must be facing alone in the woods. I had been in a kind of catatonic stupor. Fire always made me lazy while tripping, and this time seemed magnified quite a bit. I was staring at nothing, mostly just thinking and listening to Lena and Helen babble endlessly, when movement from the sky caught my eye. Like in the stranger's yard from before, the stars began to slide around in the sky like raindrops on a windshield. beginning to converge together in a strange alignment. They seemed to form sharp and soulless eyes, curved like a blade in their corners. They were parallel to each other, glowering downward with a mystical vehemence at me. They didn't move or vary in any way, which was chilling, like an ancient Gothic painting. They only held still in the black void above us all. In the instance of a single blink, the image painted in the night changed. Beneath the dazzling eyes manifested a sneering grin as the stars consistently moved together to form it. It cut through a thin, smoke-colored cloud and stretched across the sky for what appeared to be miles. It was etched meticulously to coincide immaculately with the staring eyes. Between the cunning smile and the slashing eyes, as if by some intelligent design, other stars began to gravitate towards each other. They swam like silvery minnows in a black pond and came together, forming two pitted nostrils that seemed to breathe balefully as I stared, petrified within. The image had turned my blood cold, and the demon inside me howled, mocking my fear. The sparkling white radiance of the stars began to shift to a more sinister, blood-red hue. I knew the snarling features from my past. I knew them from the night I had entered the consciousness of that sinister woman after climbing through my shadow. The same face that was now an image in the night sky was the same that had been haunting me subconsciously for months while tarnishing my dreams and assailing my thoughts. It was the progeny of her, reborn before my eyes in the bile and blood. It was a great yellow dragon who had sniffed out my flesh and found me. Its bold yellow complexion had evolved into a sanguineous appearance. The bloody glint from the converged stars cast a hideous glow that spread like red smoke throughout the space inside the fiendish beast's outline, coloring in its most prevalent features. And it watched me, only me. With instant furiousness, ripples of fear overwhelmed me. My muscles completely relented, and my entire body weighed a ton on my bones. I couldn't move, and I could hardly breathe. I could only be fed upon by its devouring gaze. My mind echoed for answers, but only fathomed more questions. What did this mean? Had the demon summoned it here for some prophetic outcome, or was this the demon? Like some child alone in his bedroom, haunted by the ravenous shadows on the wall, I closed my eyes to hide from the stalker in the sky. I had to ignore its terrible eyes and serrated grin. Ignore it, and it would just go away, I thought. Oh my God! I heard Lena's voice from what I imagined was a far-off distance beyond the much closer shrill of my inner one. Afraid of what I might find, I opened my eyes slowly and peeked into the black sky. Her tone was in that of shock, and I wholeheartedly expected to find her chewed corpse scattered around me in bloody pieces. But there was nothing. No heavenly dragon glowering like an angelic predator. And most importantly, there were no dead bodies soaked in blood muddying the soul. "You'll never believe this," Lena said. Her eyes were terrified and her voice almost unbearably shaky. She was exhausted by her intense trip, but her emotions were on high alert status. She continued, "I am tripping so hard right now this can't even be true." "What the hell is it?" I barked. Now she had my emotions on high alert. I had almost been eaten just seconds before, and now this? How could she do this to me? She held her phone out towards us. Hess and Hedlund moved closer. Their eyes were tired and worrisome. Their trips had been chipping away at them as well. "You know that guy Chris, the weird guy you guys hang out with sometimes?" I nodded. "What is it?" "Laura just told me that he's dead."